Welcome to Archways Threads, a show focusing on the threads of family and recovery support services that help make up the tapestry of life in recovery. Join us as we share stories from peers and participants in the field and practice of peer recovery support and family support and strengthening. And now, your host, Archways CEO, Michelle Lennon.
Hello, everyone. I am Michelle Lennon. We are wrapping up our conversation today with Carina and Raya, and we hope that you have enjoyed this series with her, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.
We talk about integration.
I was literally saying that word in my head.
Yeah.
I was like integrating like you as like yourself doing drugs compared to like you yourself in recovery, and like getting those two to sort of like integrate.
Yeah.
It's such a journey.
Yeah.
It can be really long.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like I'm still not all the way there.
Well, and I think about the Recovery Coach Academy, which is a curriculum written for the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery years ago. Like it's probably 20 years old now or something. But I remember, they talk about stages in recovery and integration coming far down the road. I sometimes say it for my staff. I said, do you remember what how your thought processes used to work when you were a year out, 6 months out? I'm like, tell me why you have expectations that this person is going to be 100% honest with you right now. If this was a coping mechanism that worked for them for the past 10 years, and we talk about the stages of recovery and that honesty grows over time, tell me why you're having these expectations and you're frustrated right now. Because usually it's about the coach's own stuff.
Yeah.
But
interesting. Yeah. I mean, for myself, I know like my boyfriend that I started dating, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago now. When I first met him, I experienced a lot of frustration because he was one of the only people that I currently know that didn't know me when I used drugs.
Oh.
And doesn't really know anything about recovery. And it's been, especially in the beginning, was like really painful. Even now I'm like, oh, it still kind of feels painful because I don't know how to convey to somebody that person, I feel like little Carina. And like, she matters a lot to me. And I don't know how to get her to matter to somebody that didn't know her or like that doesn't know about recovery or what it's like. And I think maybe in all the recovery world and programs and stuff that I've done, that's not something I'm never prepared for. Was not feeling like my prior self was valued.
Yes. It's so interesting because I think as a person yourself, you can look back at yourself and say, well, boy, was I an idiot for doing this or that, or some of the behavior. Like I quit drinking because my behaviors were out of control. That was the thing. Like I did things I wouldn't share with anybody that I wasn't proud of, when I was under the influence, right? So I chose to quit drinking. When I look back, or at least successively, like I can have a drink now and then. My situation never rose to the level of addiction, problematic use all through college, basically. And when I decided to stop, I just stopped. So, but I don't, like I can talk about my past self all I want. Somebody else does it though. And I get really upset, So I think like I still value myself even as the kid I was,
As you should.
But it's interesting that somebody else looking at that problem child, like, yeah, it does. It's a sensitive thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like some of my best qualities today are the qualities that got me into a lot of trouble when I was younger. And sort of reconciling, that like me being like super headstrong and independent is what is getting me to, some important ultimate goal today. But it's also the thing that got me into drugs, when I was younger. I don't know, like it's the same quality. It did different things, but I can't, hate on the person that I was, or I can't hate on that quality because I still have it. It's still me.
Yeah. And like you said, the value of who you are should have been there when society, school, the private program or whatever didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that is something that peer support workers, family support specialists, some medical providers, some psychiatrists, some different people like cafeteria workers that see the value beyond the behavior, how that's huge. And thinking about that, like the memories that last are how people made you feel.
Yeah.
And when we value each other, it feels good.
Yeah. Right.
And just thinking, even like some of the young people that I work with now are kids that I knew in elementary school, and it's that thing that how did I make them feel then is a reflection on how they treat me today. And usually it's with, kindness and respect. And it's only because I gave them kindness and respect. And it shouldn't be that difficult for us. And, sharing a story, there are people that will use it against you. There are people that will point to it. Like we said, stigma's alive and well, unfortunately.
It is.
Bias, prejudice, all of that. And it's interesting. I think where it's even more concerning is when they hold the flag of support up, but in the background they sabotage in everything you do. It's like you have to be wise when you're sharing your story and what you put in it, sharing for a purpose. Because just thinking about somebody else that was kind of in the same boat, they were being used for advertise for a recovery clinic and telling this story, and had written the whole thing up, had gone. The final draft came out. She asked me to read it, tell me what I thought. And in her story, she had shared that she had an abortion. And I had read it, and I just asked her the question. I said, this is up to you, but I just want to bring this up that your grandmother's going to see this. Okay. And you told me a little bit about your grandmother and how much she means to you. Do you think that she'll be hurt by this, or do you think she'll see you differently? And she was like, I never even thought about that. Never even thought about that. And just pulled that out. I said, when you think about what the goal of the story is, that could be important to some women who read this, because that, maybe another reason why people start drinking or, manage pain, if they have, attachment issues and things like that can come into play, because mental health comes from all different places. But the purpose of the article is about how this has helped you in your addiction health. You may not have to be there and still have the same impact that you're going through. So, but I'm not telling you what to write at all.
Yeah.
But just to think about that. So I do think sometimes when we're providing advocacy, it's always good, like if you're new at it, because like you were saying, you were new at it in your 20s and definitely felt objectified by what you were sharing, and just have somebody that's done it before kind of look it over, practice.
Yeah, I was saying something that I wish that I would have done earlier on. Now it happens like automatically because it's, been a long time of me doing this. But earlier on, I wish that I would have written down my whole, everything. And then taken themes.
Yes.
And made some bullet points, because every time you share your story, right, you are sharing slightly different things because there's a slightly different reason. And in the beginning, I thought that it was being disingenuous to not tell everyone everything. And I think that, when we're doing recovery, that hyper honesty is sort of a defense mechanism, because you're so used to people thinking that you're lying, that you're I'm going to have to tell everybody everything all the time. So
they don't think I'm hiding anything. Right?
I felt disingenuous by not sharing everything. But you're not being disingenuous. You are sharing with a purpose. So my story involves mental health stuff and chaotic drug use. So if I'm talking more about mental health, I'm going to include much more details about mental health. If I'm speaking mainly on recovery, I'm going to focus more on the recovery aspect. It doesn't mean that I have two different stories. It's one story, but different things to focus on. You didn't hear me today talk about my reproductive health, even though that's been in my story. You know what I mean? So being able to have I think a Google Doc or something, some sort of written, easily editable document, either on your phone or a laptop or whatever, where you have like your whole story. And then before you go to share it, be like, what is the goal of sharing at like the podcast tomorrow? And like, write it down. And because we have access to great technology these days, like talk to ChatGPT, like have a discussion and be like, here's my whole story. Because ChatGPT is not going to tell anyone. The robot knows everything about me, whatever. And be like, hey, this is the goal of what I need to like get across to people tomorrow. Like, what are some bullet points from my story that, you think are important that people should hear? And I think that that is a really important tool for people just getting started on this journey. It's definitely something I wish I would have done, and been told to do, 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I think it's good to have a mentor too, because I think, so Karen Welcome was my former boss as a family support specialist. She retired, and she's actually the one that helped me start the centers and stuff. And I, even today, like we just went and trained at Head Start in Massachusetts a little bit ago. And still, like I'm learning from her all the time. She is somebody that I trust. And she can look at my materials and say, oh, this can probably be taken out. Or how about adding some of this? Because she knows the audience of Head Start way better than I do.
Mm-hmm.
She did technical support for them for years. And that's the thing, like when we do advocacy, we share our story. It's always for a purpose. It's always about the audience that we're in front of, right? Whether it's an individual and, I think of reception at a doctor's office, if I'm advocating to get this person services and it hasn't gone well, like I might be asking to talk to like the nurse manager or something, then how I'm sharing the story, maybe just for that person, and because I can say, oh, this person needs counseling. This is a little bit of their story. Or I can say, this person needs to get into counseling today because DCYF is going to take her children if she does not get this paper signed. Well, the nurse manager can sign the paper, says, yep, we'll get her on the books as soon as possible. And sometimes like sharing the story, whether it's mine or sharing with somebody else, like that, it's like, what is the goal in front of you?
Right.
So it can be, little advocacy, we call it, when it's like for an individual like that. But when we're talking to a bigger audience, talking about harm reduction principles, like it's like go back to basics. What is the motorcycle helmet used for? To protect my noggin. So if I do hit the ground, I don't end up with a brain injury. And I'll share it. Like I've been into three motorcycle accidents. I sold my head.
It's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, because there is a lot to it, and I do think sometimes people get excited because they want to help. And just don't think of all these different repercussions that could happen.
And speaking of repercussions, definitely something that I have not mentioned at all yet, but you said audience. So it's been, 10 years or something like that I've been sharing my story. And one thing to be prepared for, that again, there was nobody back in the day that was like, hey, this is going to happen. There are going to be people that you don't know that are going to come at you on Facebook. They're going to send you an email. They might recognize you in public. I've never had anyone say anything negative. I'll be clear about that. But people will say really wonderful things, which 99.999% of the time is lovely. But there are, and this happened early on when my story was sort of co-opted. There were a few people that heard my story, not from me, heard it from somebody else. And apparently that, at least it seemed like that other person really talked me up. And these people met me and they were like, oh my gosh, your story changed my life. And they thought maybe I had all the answers. And especially with, in 2014, when I had only a few years of, recovery, like I did not have the answers.
Yeah.
And when someone comes to you for those answers and you are like, I don't know, 2 days out of recovery, like knowing how to navigate that is challenging. What I did was I ghosted people because I had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how to deal with these people. Like, I need to just walk away and not talk to them. Which, if you feel like that, that's also totally acceptable. Like, I haven't experienced any negative repercussions from, ghosting people that thought I was cool. Do I wish maybe I could have, like, gone back and sort of, like, maintained some kind of relationship. Like there's one person I'm thinking of who I recently saw got like a coaching certificate, not recovery coaching, but just like wellness coaching. And I think from my personal experience, the wellness industry can be a little bit predatory on people in recovery. And do I wish I still had a relationship with this person to kind of reach into her world and be like, because she was like kind of looking at me like I could be a mentor, and I dipped. But if I had been able to maintain that role, could I go back in now and be like, hey, I noticed, you did this thing. Like, I just want to check in and see how's it going? But like, I don't have really any, it would be weird if I did that now. So I think being aware of the number of people that you are going to positively impact and sort of be able to deal with that.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, people may ask you to do favors for them.
Mm-hmm.
I had a woman who was my yoga student whose son, used drugs and was in jail. And she asked me to write him pen pal letters, which I said yes. It was great. It was fine. I would still say yes today. I'm still in touch with the mom. The son ended up losing his life a few years ago. And, I keep him in my mind a lot as I sort of like move through and do this advocacy stuff. I think we all have like those people that we sort of carry around and we're like, wow, we really love them and they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
Because where else other than the recovery world can you be in your like 20s and 30s and happy your friends are dead? The military. Yeah. So just knowing how to navigate those people who are really grateful for your story. Because on the surface, that seems like maybe one of the easiest things to do. Somebody comes up and they're like, wow, thank you. Your story is so cool. And like, you can be like, wow, that's a really nice thing to say. And you don't have to say anything else.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything for anybody. If you want to, that's great. But, go talk to your own mentor, your sponsor, your coach, whatever, to maybe think about the implications first. Like, keep talking to people about it.
Especially challenging if somebody has a reoccurrence. Since they've done that advocacy too. And like we've lost people in our field in New Hampshire, people that were very special to us in the recovery world that were very instrumental in like rolling out the recovery centers and huge, like the one person in particular comes to mind, this gentleman I loved, Dean Lemire, who we kind of mirrored each other when we were starting our centers. We were both in like church basements. We both were getting like small grants to get started. We were both volunteering and kind of, testifying at the state house. We'd run into each other all the time. And he actually worked for Harbor Care at one point. So he was working with me. I used to tell him I used to hate seeing him coming because we were doing the CAPRIS accreditation at the time, the Council on Accreditation for Peer Recovery Support Services. And it was a real heavy lift for us because we were small. It was like three of us working, as fast as we could, but they had so many requirements. And he was the one in charge of like making sure we were on track and stuff, but loved him dearly. But he was held up on posters as like, for like 211 and all of that. And I think a lot of us recognized that he was struggling, but it was almost like he knows everything, and it's painful. Like you said, there are people that we carry with us.
Yeah.
And he's definitely one who was such an advocate for harm reduction. He actually co-authored a curriculum, recovery coaching and harm reduction pathway with Jim Wolfing, who will actually be at the upcoming Recovery Inclusion Community and Harm Reduction Conference that SOS puts on. Every year Jim is there. Yeah, just thinking back, like that we also have to be conscious, like those people that do advocacy, when we run into them, just because they did advocacy before doesn't mean they might be having a bad day or a bad time. And we want to be conscious that they're people.
Yeah, I mean, when I had that really bad year with dealing with that organization and the discrimination, I definitely felt like there was a lack of support, for like, I don't live in New Hampshire. I work in New Hampshire. I'm from New Hampshire, but like, I was like, I'm not dialed in. Like, who do I go to for help? Who do I call? Like, I don't even know what to do. And I think that's even less of a barrier though than like knowing who you can call, but feeling like you can't.
Yeah.
And it's like,
because you don't want to disappoint them, or
Yeah, which is so weird. Like, why do we think in our minds that it would be disappointing? Like
it's because stigma works on all of it.
I know. I'm not disappointed in you. Whoever's on the other side of this, like, I'm not disappointed in you if you do drugs. You're still awesome.
Yeah. It's interesting because running a recovery center, we've had staff that have had reoccurrence, and one of the things I say in our trainings to people is find out what your agency policies are, because a lot of times they're not recovery friendly. If somebody has a recurrence, and like we have a whole process of, for 3 months, your job is absolutely not in jeopardy. Like if you need to go to treatment, if you just need some extra support, how do we write your ship? That kind of thing. And depending on what they're doing for work, might change job duties for a while, but because ultimately we want to make sure our staff are good, and okay, and that they can come to us and can talk to us, but it's not like that everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of that dichotomy or division in the recovery community, that, well, if you're not in recovery, even that is like wrong thinking. Oh, well, what do I have to Yeah. Because we don't say like you're in and out of any other disease, right? It's like you're either doing well or you're not doing well, or you're showing symptoms or you don't have symptoms, or you're in remission or you're not, And I think about that like substance use is not a symptom of recovery, it's a symptom of substance use disorder, right? And it's like, but people in recovery can have reoccurrences of use and still be in recovery, because it doesn't take away everything. And I think that's one of the other issues, like you were talking about sobriety, assuming that you mean abstinence based,
right?
No other substances at all, right? And thinking about how we frame that, with like the white key tag, like it's like you're starting all over with that feeling.
I think that's like counting thing with AA. And I love AA. It's like an anarchist organization. Like, it's so cool, but it's not corporate, and like it exists all over the world. It's literally run for the people, by the people. And I think that's like the coolest thing ever. So definitely not down on AA at all. But the counting thing, kind of drives me nuts, because, as people who have used substances, defined sometimes as addicts, we can, maybe be addicted to things like counting. And it's like, geez, we get so wrapped up in numbers. Like, think about like Duolingo. Do you have a Duolingo streak?
Can I just tell you? Studying Chinese, and I posted it on Facebook. I had something like 495 days or something. And tell me this isn't like typical, right? They changed, they upgraded the app. The day they did it, I'm like, I'm done. But yes, I was addicted to numbers with Duolingo.
The thing with Duolingo is, right, like I do my Duolingo almost every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know, like 28 days out of the month or something. But Duolingo has a streak freeze.
Yeah.
So like, hey, if you're in recovery and you are on like a 500-day streak, and then you go out and like, I don't know, how or like do some drugs, whatever it is, you can use a streak freeze. It's okay.
There you go.
Like, your recovery didn't end because you do drugs. Like, use the streak freeze. It's fine. Like, keep counting. Like, don't give up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. It has been like such a pleasure. I just realized that we've been talking for a while. Well, thankfully, like our producer is awesome, and she will divide this up into multiple episodes, I'm sure. Yeah. Any final thoughts that you want to share?
I'm sure I'll think of them as soon as I'm like halfway home.
Well, we can always have you back when you're like, Dr. Carina.
Right? One piece of advocacy that I have not been able to get into, that anyone out there is listening, the lived experience advisory panel, we've gone into nursing classes and stuff. I've never been able to advocate with medical students. And it's like, maybe your editor can like edit this part out, like not shit on lead people at all. Because I'm always like, guys, can we go to a medical school? And they're like, they're in there more important. They're the first point of contact. I'm like, shut up. I think advocating to medical students and pre-medical students is really important because even if you don't view them as your first point in contact, they are where the buck stops.
Yeah.
And we don't learn about recovery in any kind of important, granular detail as a pre-medical or as a medical student.
Interesting, huh?
And
But as what is prevalent as it is in the United States,
well, that's
with
the thing.
people dying at a rate of 9/11 happening every 2 days.
There's one medical school class worth of students that dies every year by suicide. One medical school class. That's like 200 people.
Yeah.
So I would love to be able to, in my final thoughts, I want to keep up this advocacy as I go through medical school. And I would love to be able to broaden my audience to pre-med and medical students because they often are very disconnected from what recovery is or who is in recovery, but they are the ones treating you. They are writing your prescriptions. They are providing your Suboxone, your methadone, your naltrexone, Vivitrol, whatever it is, your freaking fluoxetine. They're the ones prescribing it.
What's prescribing pain meds to people on recovery?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there needs to be more of me talking to them. Yeah. That's what I do.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's my closing statement.
It has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And yeah, if anybody has any thoughts, I can always reach out to Carina. She's
Don't
interning.
hesitate to reach out.
Yeah,
Here.
she's interning in New Hampshire for a little bit longer with Robert Care.
Yes.
And so we do have access to her for a little bit of time. So again, thank you for sharing about the pearls
And
better
for inviting me. I love to talk.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Archways Threads. If there is a topic you'd like to see us cover, email us at podcast@archwaysnh.org or call us at 603-960-2128. Visit our website at archwaysnh.org to learn more about the Archways family of recovery and family resource centers.